I can still hear her voice. Sharp, cold, glass cutting through me. "You'll never be someone." She said it in front of everyone, smiling like my dreams were a punchline. I froze. My own blood felt frozen. I wanted to disappear. My stomach knotted. My hands shook. "Someone," I muttered to myself later that night, sitting on the edge of my bed. "Am I really not someone?" The room was small. Bare walls, a single lamp casting long shadows. No one knew I was crying. I didn't want anyone to know. "You stir ridiculous," my voice cracked as I whispered to the empty room. "I can do this. I will do this. I just need a chance." I remembered the business pitch. My first one. I was nervous. I admit it. I stumbled over words. My notes fell. My heart raced. And there she was, laughing, not softly, not hidden, loud, mocking. "You call that a pitch?" she said. "Please, even a child could do better." I wanted to vanish into the floor. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something at her face. But I didn't. I swallowed it. Like always. My chest tightened as I replayed it in my mind. Every word, every smirk, every eye roll, her perfection, her control, the way she made me feel small, like I was nothing. I had always loved her though. I wanted her approval. I wanted her to say, "I'm proud of you," but all I got was this, a verdict. Final. Crushing. I curled up under my blanket and let myself cry, soft at first, then louder. I was shaking. My face wet. My dreams seemed to crumble in front of me. "Maybe she steps right," I whispered. Broken. "Maybe I self never be someone." And then, in the silence, I felt it, a spark, a shift. Something raw and quiet, burning in my chest, rage. Not loud, not ugly, not yet, just simmering, waiting. I thought about all the times she tried to control me, all the lectures, the criticisms, the impossible standards. All the times I smiled and nodded, pretending to agree, pretending it didn't hurt, pretending I was okay. No more. "I'm not going to let her define me," I muttered, my voice firmer now. "Not ever." I sat up, pulled the blanket tighter around me. I stared at the ceiling. Imagined a life where I didn't care about her approval, where I built myself up, not for her, not for anyone, but for me. A plan began to form in my head, quiet, small but undeniable. One day she would see, one day I would rise, and it wouldn't just be success she'd witness, it would be her own underestimation coming back to her. Poetic. I could almost taste it. I laughed softly to myself, bitter but satisfied, not at her, not yet. At the thought of her being wrong, about me. "I'll show you, Reina," I whispered into the shadows. "You'll see who I really am." Her words had broken me, but they had also awakened something else. Something stronger. Something dangerous. Something that refused to be silenced. I laid back down. The tears had slowed. My heart still ached, but there was fire in it now. Fire that couldn't be ignored. Fire that would drive me, shape me, change me. That night, I didn't just cry. I made a promise. To myself. This was the beginning. The beginning of my reckoning. And Aunt Rena, she had no idea it was coming. I didn't recognize myself anymore. Each morning I woke up tired, not just sleepy but hollow, like someone had scooped out the center of me and left a shell behind. I floundered through dead-end jobs, delivery shifts, data entry, waitressing. No one noticed. No one cared. And I stopped caring too. My resume sat on my desk, untouched. My ambitions, crumbling under the weight of Aunt Rena's words. "You'll never be someone," she had said. And every time I tried it echoed back, louder, mocking. At family gatherings, I became invisible. They'd laugh, trade stories, and I'd sit there, quiet, just small, waiting for anyone to notice me. "You're okay, right?" my mom asked once, touching my arm like she could fix what I couldn't. "I'm fine," I muttered, forcing a smile. But it wasn't fine. Her pity made my chest tighten, suffocated me. I hated being seen as fragile. I hated being pitied. "You look exhausted," she said again. A week later, "Why don't you take some time off?" I wanted to scream, "Do you think rest will erase how worthless I feel?" But I didn't. I swallowed it like I always did. It wasn't just the family, it was me. I spent nights staring at my bank account, watching the numbers blink at me. Not enough. Never enough. My plans, my dreams, my vision, they felt like sand slipping through my fingers. Then there was Jazz. My best friend. My lifeline. Hey, she said one night, plopping down on my couch like she owned the place. She grabbed the empty cup I had been staring at for an hour. You stare still breathing, that saps something. I glared at her. I feel dead. She laughed, but it wasn't sit cruel. Dead people don't sit complain this much. Trust me. I sup in failing, Jas. Everywhere. I sup in nothing. You sir not nothing, she snapped, her voice cutting through my fog. You sir just stuck. And stuck is not forever. You sir brilliant, you just need a spark. A spark, I scoffed. All I have are ashes. She leaned forward, grabbed my hand and squeezed it. Then let such build a fire. You can such see it yet, but it's such there. Her words hit me differently. Not like comfort, like a challenge. A dare. I sat back, staring at my hands, thinking about Aunt Rena's face, that smug smirk, that laugh when I failed. Do you ever imagine proving her wrong? I asked her quietly, almost afraid to say it. All the time, Jas said. Every time you doubt yourself. Remember this, she doesn't get to decide your story. You do. I nodded. But it wasn't steady enough. Not yet. The nights got longer. I spent hours alone, plotting quietly, scribbling ideas on scraps of paper, on my phone notes in the margins of old notebooks. I visualized turning the tables. My mind raced with possibilities. Every humiliating memory became fuel. Every cruel word, a tool. What if I just disappeared for a bit? I whispered to myself one night, and then came back, stronger? Jenna's had warned me once. Don't set let anger eat you alive. But don't set ignore it either. Channel it, be smarter than it. I began to see the outlines of a plan. Nothing concrete yet, just visions. A life where I wasn't defined by Aunt Rena's cruelty, where I was seen, feared, respected. Some nights I even smiled. Small, tentative, not because things were better, but because I knew I could make them better. I could turn this despair into something powerful. You're scaring me, Jas joked one afternoon when I caught her off guard with a particularly sharp comment about my dreams. I sup serious, I said, leaning back, letting a dangerous grin play across my lips. I sup got ideas. Big ideas. She studied me like she always did, eyes narrowing. Okay, I believe you, but promise me you won't set get reckless. I won't, I said, though deep down I knew I'd take risks. Smart risks. Necessary ones. I wouldn't just prove her wrong, I'd change the game entirely. And in the quiet moments, when I was alone with my thoughts, I let myself imagine it fully. Aunt Rena realizing she underestimated me, watching her face when she saw what I was capable of, feeling the power shift. I wanted it. Not just the success, not just the revenge, but the clarity. The knowledge that I controlled my destiny, that her words could never hold me down again. The months of despair had been brutal. I had fallen through the cracks, felt invisible, felt worthless, but falling had only shown me the edges of my strength. I was still standing, still breathing, still plotting, still dreaming. And I knew one day, I'd rise. And when I did, Aunt Rena would finally see. The room smelled like ambition and perfume. Too many people, too many smiles, too many hands shaking, all while I tried not to make a fool of myself. I hovered by the corner, clutching my notebook like a shield. Are you lost, or just hiding? A voice asked. I turned sharp eyes, calculating. Mr. Khan, someone everyone seemed to respect before they even spoke. I'm just looking, I stammered. My voice sounded small even to me. He chuckled. Looking or waiting for someone to notice you. Big difference. I wanted to disappear, but something in his gaze stopped me. Something that felt like recognition. Not pity, recognition. I have some ideas, I said cautiously, almost afraid. I said been thinking about real estate, small projects, flipping properties. He raised an eyebrow. Real estate? Interesting choice. Many avoid it because it's considered extraordinary. Set. I hesitated. My aunt, I stopped, embarrassed. She doesn't think it sets respectable. Mr. Khan smiled faintly. Ah, family opinions, poison and fuel at the same time. I blinked. His words were direct, but not cruel. Fuel? Yes, he said. leaning slightly closer. Sometimes what they doubt in you is exactly what you need to pursue. I swallowed, heart racing. He wasn't laughing at me, he was listening, really listening. I don't stet have much, I admitted. No capital, no connections. I sep failed before. He studied me, eyes sharp. Failure is temporary, vision is permanent. Show me yours. I flipped my notebook open, trembling slightly, and explained my ideas. Each word felt heavy, vulnerable. I expected at least a smirk, a shrug. But he listened, nodded, asked questions, challenged assumptions without dismissing me. Yusep thought this through, he said finally. With guidance, you could make this work. I can help you. Help me? My voice cracked, disbelief mingled with hope. How? I can introduce you to the right people, he said. Mentorship, advice, and a small loan to get started. Nothing extravagant, but enough to prove your plan can fly. I stared at him, my chest tightened, my hands shook. You Azdude really do that? He nodded, almost casually. I sub seen potential wasted too many times. I don't stet do that anymore, not if I can help it. For the first time in months, I felt visible, seen, important. Not because anyone said I could be someone, but because he believed it, believed in me. Thank you, I whispered. I don't know what to say. You don't set need to say anything, he replied. Just do, make me proud. Make yourself proud. I closed the notebook slowly, my fingers trembling. Hope, a dangerous, fragile thing. Patience, he added, as if reading my mind. This will take time, strategy, quiet persistence. You can stet rush what matters, but if you play it right, you shall not just succeed, you shall dominate. His words sank in. Dominance. Power. Something deep inside me stirred. That old fire. The one Aunt Rena tried to snuff out. I pictured her face, smug, self-satisfied, thinking I'd stay small, weak. The thought didn't make me angry. Not yet. It made me relentless. Will it take years? I asked cautiously. Maybe, he said, or maybe less. Depends on your cunning, your drive, and your patience. I can be patient, I said, almost too quickly, but my voice carried a weight now, one I hadn't had before. I seps waited long enough. Good, he said, giving me a small nod. Let's steps start then. I shall connect you with some contacts. Study the market. Learn, fail fast, learn faster, and remember always stay quiet about your strategy. People love to underestimate those who seem invisible. I nodded, absorbing everything, every lesson, every word, my mind raced with possibilities. I won't let you down, I said, and this time I meant it. Not just him, me, myself. And remember, he added, voice dropping slightly, almost a whisper, the right revenge is measured, silent, strategic. It tastes sweeter when it's seps earned. I froze for a second. The words hit harder than I expected. Not just guidance, direction, motivation. A reminder that my past humiliation could be fuel, my aunt's cruelty could be my advantage. Yes, I whispered, barely audible. I understand. He smiled faintly, patted my shoulder, and walked away, leaving me alone with my thoughts, my notebook, and a heart suddenly full of possibility. I walked home that night under the streetlights, notebook clutched tight. Every shadow seemed less threatening. Every whisper of wind felt like an accomplice. I could almost taste it, the satisfaction of proving her wrong. Not loudly, not immediately, but inevitably. This was the beginning of something. Not just a business, not just a plan, but a rise. A quiet, calculated, unstoppable ascent. And Aunt Rena. She had no idea what was coming. I started small. A rundown building, barely standing, peeling paint, broken windows. People laughed when I told them I wanted to flip it. You'll lose everything, one neighbor said. I didn't flinch. I smiled. Inside I was burning. Ollie? My business partner was already there, surveying the place like a general assessing a battlefield. This is worse than I expected, he muttered, kicking a loose brick. Exactly, I said, leaning against the wall. It steps ugly now, but that steps where we make our mark. We turn what everyone overlooks into something they can stepped ignore. He looked at me like I was insane. You really think you can do this? I know I can, I replied, My fingers tightened around the notebook in my bag. Every plan, every calculation, every late-night idea, it all pointed here. Ollie shrugged. Okay, I step in. But we move smart. No flashy mistakes. I smiled. That seps the plan. The first weeks were chaos. Contractors missing deadlines, permits held up, materials delayed. I stayed late, nights blending into mornings. I walked the halls, clipboard in hand, envisioning each wall painted, each floor polished. Every small victory was a thrill. Every minor setback, a lesson. "You such are obsessive," Ali said one night, shaking his head as we went over the budget again. "But, damn, it's SEP's working. The place is shaping up." I leaned back, tired but exhilarated. Obsessive is the new powerful. And all the while Aunt Rena's words haunted me. I pictured her smug face every time I made a decision, every contract I signed, every renovation approved, every investor pitch. It was all a silent message to her: "You underestimated me." I started sending whispers through mutual friends, casual updates. "Oh, the building's almost fully booked," I'd hear one of them say. Or, "She's managing some big project downtown now." Subtle, harmless, to anyone else. Poison to her. Ali noticed my glances at the phone. Still thinking about her? Every day, I admitted. Not in a bitter way yet. Just motivation. He smirked. "You supper obsessed." Maybe, but it keeps me sharp. Negotiations became my battlefield. I learned to read people, to sense weakness, to exploit hesitation without seeming greedy. Ali handled the streets. I handled the meetings. Together we moved quietly, effectively. One evening, after a particularly grueling investor session, Ali leaned back and said, "You know, people are starting to notice. Your name is coming up, in the right circles." I let out a quiet laugh. Good. Let them whisper. Let them underestimate. That SEPs when you strike. Strike? He raised an eyebrow. I smiled, almost to myself. Patience, Ali. Timing is everything. The thrill wasn't just the business, it was the power, the slow creeping sense that I could shape the world around me, that I wasn't invisible anymore, that every decision, every move could shift everything. I spent nights reviewing contracts, cross-checking budgets, planning expansions. Ali sometimes teased me. "You sleep in your spreadsheet more than your bed." "Better than sleeping in failure," I said softly, mostly to myself. And yet, shadows of doubt lingered. Would I be able to sustain this? Would one misstep erase months of effort? I pushed it down, focused on the work, on the fire inside. Then came the first real test. A difficult tenant, someone trying to renegotiate terms unfairly. Ali looked at me, waiting for my move. "I'll handle it," I said, walking into the office. I didn't shout, didn't threaten. I simply laid out the facts, the numbers, the agreements. My voice was calm, firm, controlled. By the end of the hour, the tenant was signing the original contract. Ali clapped lightly when I walked out. "Nice. That was impressive." I allowed myself a small smile. Victory, quiet but undeniable. And all the while I imagined Aunt Rena hearing about it, someone whispering in her ear, "She's doing what you said she never could." I started taking bigger risks, buying another property, reaching out to investors I had once thought out of reach. Each success, each step forward was a whisper to her. Not loud, not obvious, just enough to unsettle. "I can believe you stir doing this," Ali said one late night as we reviewed the latest project. "You stir really transforming everything." "I am not just transforming buildings," I replied, eyes distant staring at the blueprints. "I am transforming myself, and soon, everything else." There were nights I stayed alone in the empty building, walking the floors we'd renovated. Fresh paint, polished wood, new lights casting clean shadows across the walls. The power in that silence, intoxicating. I whispered into the empty halls, almost like a promise. "Soon, Rena, you'll see. You'll regret every cruel word, but it won't be obvious. Not yet, that's the beauty of it." Ollie caught me one night, notebook in hand, muttering to myself, talking to ghosts again. "Maybe," I said. Or maybe I said I'm talking to my future. He shook his head, smiling. "One day you'll have to stop talking and start celebrating." I nodded, but only half-heartedly. Celebration would come. Later. Right now it was about momentum, about silent power, about moving pieces on a board no one else even knew existed. And every late-night meeting, every negotiation, every careful decision felt like a step closer, not just to success, but to the day I would finally claim what was mine. And Aunt Rena? Still smug, still blind, still unaware that the game had changed. Family gatherings had always been a minefield, but now, I walked in with eyes wide open, observing, measuring. Aunt Rena sat at the head of the table, as always, perfect posture, polished smile, the illusion of control. But today, something was different. I noticed it first in her hands, tight fists resting on her lap, fingers twitching ever so slightly, then in her eyes fleeting frustration when someone mentioned a project I'd quietly completed. "Have you seen the new downtown building?" a neighbor asked casually. I smiled, letting the words slip naturally. "Yes, I just finished overseeing the last renovations. It's fully leased now." Aunt Rena stiffened. Her jaw tightened ever so slightly. I caught the flash of something dark in her gaze. Envy. Sarah, my cousin, leaned closer to her. "Mom's worried about some bills, I think," she whispered, loud enough for me to hear. I froze for a heartbeat, savoring the word worried. "Bills?" I asked innocently, tilting my head. "Really?" Sarah shrugged, eyes darting to Aunt Rena. "It's nothing big, just some unexpected expenses. Mom's been stressed." I nodded slowly, smiling. "We all have our challenges. Makes success taste sweeter when you overcome them, doesn't it?" Aunt Rena's smile faltered, almost imperceptibly. I kept my tone casual, warm, harmless. But every word carried a hidden charge. A subtle reminder: I am moving, I am growing, and you are not invincible. Later, as dessert was served, Aunt Rena dropped her fork, again almost too deliberate. I watched her flinch when another cousin mentioned my latest property acquisition. "Downtown? You got that one too?" someone asked. "Yes," I said lightly, picking up my glass. "It's amazing what a little vision and patience can do." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't say anything, but I felt it. The tremor in her composure, the mask starting to crack. Sarah leaned closer again, whispering to me while Aunt Rena was distracted. "She steps stressed. More than usual. You stare, really getting under her skin." I smirked subtly, careful not to be obvious. Interesting. The thrill of it, watching the perfect, untouchable Aunt Rena show cracks, was intoxicating. Not in a loud, obvious way, in a quiet, strategic way. Power creeping in silently. Later, Aunt Rena approached me, smooth and polite. "I hear you've been busy," she said, eyes flicking briefly to my hands, "making moves." "Yes," I replied, voice calm. "It keeps me busy. I like seeing progress. Tangible results." Her eyes narrowed for a split second, a flicker of tension, then her smile returned, polished. "Of course, progress is important." I nodded, keeping my tone friendly, even warm. Every smile, every casual word was calculated, innocuous on the surface, lethal underneath. "You've changed," she added, almost a whisper. "You're different." I allowed a soft laugh, light and airy. Maybe, or maybe I stem just finally myself. The air between us was charged, invisible, electric. I could feel the power shift, tiny increments, like a tide pulling her off balance. Sarah caught my eye again, raising a brow with a tiny smirk. She knew I saw the cracks. She knew I understood. And for the first time I realized my family, my aunt, was vulnerable, not invincible, not untouchable. "I always thought life would be easy for you," Aunt Rena said suddenly, voice lower now, almost controlled. "Everything comes naturally to some people. Not to me." I tilted my head, smiling softly. "Life isn't about ease. It's about making the most of what you have, and sometimes it's about strategy." Her hands twitched again, subtle, but I noticed. Always noticing. By the end of the evening I had mapped it all in my head. Her envy, her insecurities, her fear of loss, the quiet tension in the room, the unspoken acknowledgement that I was no longer small, invisible, or inconsequential. Every casual conversation I had, every smile I offered, carried weight now, invisible weight. Silent power, the kind that creeps into someone's life and leaves them unsettled before they realize why. I walked home that night under the dim street lights, notebook clutched in my bag. I whispered to myself, almost like a promise: Patience. Every mask falls eventually. Every facade cracks. And when they do, it will be your moment. The thrill wasn't the confrontation. Not yet. It was the awareness, the knowledge that I had already begun to tip the scales, that Aunt Rhina, for all her control and pride, had vulnerabilities I could and would exploit. I imagined her alone later, replaying the whispers she heard, the casual updates I sent through friends, the subtle signs of my rising influence, feeling a twinge of unease she didn't understand. And I smiled, quietly. This was the pull of silent revenge, the intoxicating knowledge that power could be grown in shadows, nurtured in patience, and unleashed when least expected. Every move I made, every careful word I spoke, was a thread in a web she didn't even see forming. The masks were starting to fall. And soon, the entire house of cards would follow. I waited outside her apartment block, hands tucked into my coat pockets, pretending to be casual. The building looked the same: cracked paint, broken tiles, a faint smell of damp, but in my mind, it was mine. Already mine. "You're early, Mr. Ahmed," my lawyer muttered beside me. His briefcase swung lightly, heavy with contracts and authority. "I like being early," I said softly, keeping my eyes on the building. "Gives me time to watch." "Watch what?" I smiled faintly, controlled her reaction. Mr. Ahmed didn't set comment. He didn't set need to. The door opened and there she was. Aunt Rena, perfect posture, polished shoes, that same smug expression. She didn't see me at first. She was too busy thinking she was untouchable. "Abdul," she said, raising an eyebrow. "What are you doing here?" "Hello, Aunt Rena," I said calmly, stepping inside. My voice was steady, polite, professional, but inside my chest burned with anticipation. "I wanted to discuss an opportunity," I continued, keeping my tone neutral. "A real estate investment you're building here." She laughed, short, sharp, cutting. "Oh, please. You think you can manage anything? Let alone my property?" I kept my smile. Soft, controlled. "I believe I can. That's why I asked Mr. Ahmed to join me." Her eyes flicked to him, narrowing. "Lawyer?" "Yes," I said, "to formalize the proposal." She crossed her arms. "I don't need a lawyer to tell me this is foolish." I leaned slightly forward, maintaining eye contact. "Perhaps. But it's a formal offer. One I think you still want to consider." Mr. Ahmed stepped forward, briefcase in hand. "Miss Rena, if I may, here is the proposal." He opened the briefcase, pulling out the lease agreement. Her eyes widened slightly as she read. I watched her flinch at certain phrases that made her realize the magnitude of what she was seeing. You want me to lease this to you?" she said, voice trembling with disbelief. "Yes," I said quietly. "The terms are fair. You continue receiving your usual payments, maintenance, upgrades, security, all handled professionally, and I manage the property." Her lips pressed together. Her perfect smile faltered. A twitch in her jaw betrayed her. "I don't understand," she stammered. This is absurd. You stir inexperienced. You stir'll fail. You can stubber." I held up a hand, polite but firm. I studied the market, inspected the building, prepared the finances, and with Mr. Ahmed here, everything is legally binding. It's an opportunity for both of us. She looked from the contract to me, to Mr. Ahmed, then back to the contract. Her eyes widened again. "You're serious?" she asked, voice almost a whisper. "But never been more serious," I replied. She laughed nervously, a brittle sound. You think I just hand over my building?" "To you? You wouldn't hand it over," I said. "You lease it, with terms that protect you. But also, recognize reality." Reality, that word hung in the air like a knife. She opened her mouth to speak, closed it again, swallowed. "I don't know what to say," she muttered, voice trembling. "You don't have to say anything now," I said softly, keeping my tone professional. "Take the proposal, review it, consider it carefully." She nodded, unable to meet my eyes. The mask was cracking, the perfect control she prided herself on, slipping. I'll think about it," she said finally. "Of course," I said, smiling faintly. Controlled, calm, polite, every word a whisper of triumph. Mr. Ahmed added, "Time is of the essence, Miss Rena. The offer is valid for 1 week. We advise a timely decision. Her hands shook slightly as she took the contract. I saw the fleeting flash of vulnerability. The realization that the tables had turned. As we left, she didn't say another word, just stared at the papers in her hands. The irony wasn't lost on me. Outside, I let myself exhale slowly. My chest still burned, but this time it wasn't frustration or anger. It was vindication. Quiet, controlled, calculated glee. Looks like it's happening, mister, Ahmed said, closing his briefcase. I nodded, eyes still on the building behind her. It is. Every meeting, every decision, every small step led to this moment. He raised an eyebrow, and she doesn't even realize it yet. No, I said, voice low, not yet, but she will. I imagined her later, alone, rereading the proposal, panic threatening to rise, the smug Aunt Rena, realizing she'd been outmaneuvered, not with anger, not with confrontation, but with strategy. Silent, unstoppable. I can see it now, I whispered to myself, the words tasting sweet, the look on her face when she fully understands that I am her landlord, that she answered to me. The streetlights cast long shadows across the sidewalk. I didn't move immediately. I lingered, savoring the quiet triumph, the anticipation. Every step of this plan, every calculated move had led here. And soon, she would feel the full weight of her underestimation. But I would remain calm, composed, polite, always polite. That was the beauty of it. Power wrapped in civility, revenge wrapped in professionalism. I smiled faintly, letting the thought sink in. The first true payoff. Years of careful planning culminating in a single undeniable moment. Aunt Rena, my landlord now. And nothing had ever felt sweeter. The first call came on a rainy Tuesday. My phone buzzed just as I was reviewing contracts for a new property. Hello? I said casually. Abdul, it stubs me. Aunt Rena Sepp's voice quivered almost unfamiliar. I need a favor. I froze for a heartbeat, savoring the sound, the once imposing voice reduced to hesitation. A favor? I asked. Calm, controlled. Yes. The boiler, it's acting up again. Could you send someone? I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch. Of course, I said finally. Smooth. I said I'll have a technician there by morning. Thank you, she murmured. Vulnerable, almost human. I hung up and stared at the ceiling. Every call, every hesitating request, was a reminder of the tables turned. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her empire? My management now. Her pride? Fragile and cracked. A week later she called again. Abdul, the rent. I think I might be late this month. I raised an eyebrow. Late? You realize the lease terms are clear, Aunt Rena. Payments are due on the 1st. I know, she stammered, voice trembling. It's steps, just some unexpected expenses. Could you extend a few days? I smiled faintly, polite. 3 days, no more. Thank you, Abdul. I appreciate it. 3 days later, she called with a complaint about a broken window. Another, about a leaking pipe. Each call, each tremor in her voice, fed the quiet satisfaction growing inside me. Not cruelty. No. Justice. Careful, silent justice. One afternoon, she tried to negotiate. Abdul, she began, smooth but shaky. I was thinking maybe we could adjust the lease. You know, for old times' sip's sake. Old times' sip's sake, I echoed, voice calm, measured. You mean the times you said I sipped never be someone? Her silence stretched. I could almost hear the blood rushing in her ears. Abdul? It's different now, she said finally, hesitant. Maybe we could compromise. I'm afraid the lease is binding, Aunt Rena, I said softly, almost gently. Legally, I'm responsible for maintaining fairness for all tenants, and as your landlord, I must uphold that. Her lips pressed together, a small tremor. I see. And in that moment I caught a glimpse. A flicker of humanity behind the pride. The same woman who had scorned me for dreaming, now humbled by circumstance, vulnerable. It was strange. A pang ran through me, not regret, not sympathy, something sharper. A recognition of the balance, of how far I'd come. Another call. Another complaint. Another tiny flinch. Abdul, the elevator, she began, voice shaking again. Its steps stuck. Could you please? Could you send someone? I paused, listening, hearing her tremble, hearing her hesitation, hearing her acknowledge the rules she once ignored. I'll send a team immediately, I said, professional, polite, controlled. Thank you, she whispered, voice cracking slightly. I hung up and exhaled slowly. My hands tingled, satisfaction and something else. A recognition that revenge wasn't just about her pain, it was about my triumph, about seeing her humbled while maintaining my integrity. Every late payment, every minor complaint, every hesitating apology she offered reminded me of the cruelty she'd shown me years ago. Her sharp words, her smirks, the dismissals, they came back in reverse, tiny shards reflecting the power I now held. And yet I couldn't ignore it. The glimpses of her humanity made the victory sharper, clearer, not because I felt mercy, but because I understood consequence, cause and effect. She had built walls around herself, and now I was carefully dismantling them, brick by brick, call by call, complaint by complaint. One evening she called late, voice almost pleading. Abdul, I don't set mean to bother you. I thought, maybe you could. Your building is my responsibility now, Aunt Rena, I interrupted gently. Calmly, I will handle every concern professionally, as I must. But I can compromise the rules. She sighed. Long. Resigned. I understand. I really do. I smiled faintly, soft but victorious. Good. I seemed glad. I hung up and leaned back in my chair. Alone, silent. The rain tapping against the window sounded like applause. Every shiver in her voice, every falter, every tentative request, it was a mirror showing me not just her vulnerability but my own evolution. I had grown, stronger, patient, strategic, and in the reflection of her cracks, I saw the careful orchestration of every choice I had made. Every step, every whisper, every subtle victory leading to this, the reversal of power, the acknowledgement of consequence, and the intoxicating thrill of justice measured and precise. Revenge wasn't just satisfying, it was enlightening. And Aunt Rena, she had no idea how thoroughly the lesson had been learned. The invitations went out weeks in advance. Family, neighbors, friends, everyone I knew. I called it a reunion, casual, warm, but in my mind it was more than that. The day arrived. The sun was bright, but I didn't feel the warmth. My eyes were on the entrance, scanning for her. Aunt Rena arrived fashionably late. Of course, perfect hair, designer heels, that same self-satisfied smile plastered across her face. Abdul, look at you, you've grown so much, she said, arms wide, hugging me with the kind of force that tries to mask authority. Thank you, Aunt Rena, I said softly, holding her gaze. Polite, controlled. But inside, my chest thrummed with anticipation. Sarah nudged her mother, whispering something I couldn't quite hear. I only caught the twitch of Aunt Rena's jaw. The ceremony began. I welcomed everyone, smiling warmly, thanking them for attending. Then subtly, I led them on a tour of my properties, each more impressive than the last. The renovated buildings, the sleek interiors, the tenants I had personally signed, everything a testament to my vision and hard work. Isn't this incredible? I said, gesturing toward the gleaming lobby of my newest building. We transformed a nearly abandoned property into thriving apartments, fully leased with sustainable investments and modern amenities. Whispers spread through the crowd. Admiration, genuine, curious glances, a few raised eyebrows, eyes flicking toward Aunt Rena. She followed, rigid, trying to keep her composure. But the cracks were there, the flinches when someone complimented my work, the subtle swallow when she realized her pride was being overshadowed. One neighbor leaned in, whispering to her, "You always said Abdul could never be someone, seems you were wrong, huh?" Her lips pressed together. I watched her try to smile, to dismiss it, but the tension in her shoulders betrayed her. I guided the group to the courtyard, where a small stage had been set. I gave a short speech, polished, professional yet personal. Thank you all for being here, I began, voice steady. This isn't just a celebration of buildings. It's a celebration of perseverance, vision, and the courage to start small and aim high. I caught Aunt Rena's eyes in the crowd. The recognition, the disbelief. When I first began, I continued, I faced doubt from everyone around me, even family. Words that cut, moments that shook confidence, moments I thought I stood fail, but here we are, and I am grateful, because every challenge made this possible. The audience murmured in admiration. Eyes widened, phones raised, cameras clicked, whispers about my achievements floated through the air, impossible to ignore. Aunt Rena's face tightened. I saw it clearly now, the pride she once held, the arrogance, the certainty it was crumbling piece by piece. Abdul, these are your buildings? Someone asked her, voice awed. Yes, she said, finally voice tight. All his work. The words, innocent to everyone else, were a dagger. She couldn't hide it. The envy, the disbelief, the faint tremor when she spoke my name aloud. I smiled politely at her, soft and warm. Thank you, Aunt Rena. I'm glad you could see it for yourself. Aunt Rena opened her mouth, then closed it. No words came, only a tight nod, a forced smile. The silence said everything. I continued the tour, showing the communal spaces, the renovated apartments, the tenants gathered for the event. Each compliment, each word of admiration was like a quiet applause directed at me, and by extension a subtle reminder to her. She had underestimated me. She had scoffed. She had dismissed me. Later, as refreshments were served, I overheard conversations, fragments of astonishment. Did you know he started with nothing? Completely transformed that old building downtown. I always thought he's set to never make it, but look at him now. And in the middle of the room, Aunt Rena stood frozen, lips pressed, hands gripping her purse. The perfect composure she relied on so heavily had failed her. I caught Sarah's eye across the room. She smiled subtly. I nodded. Small victories stacked like bricks. Layer by layer, the reality of my rise pressing down on her facade. I let the moment linger, savoring it silently. No gloating, no theatrics. Just observation, just the knowledge that the whispers, the admiration, the acknowledgement, they were mine, and she could not erase them. Finally, I walked over, soft and polite. I hope you enjoyed the tour, Aunt Rena. I'm glad you were able to witness everything firsthand. Her eyes flicked to me, glossy but unreadable. Its steps, impressive, she whispered. Truly. Yes, I said gently, voice calm, controlled. Sometimes words from years ago aren't the measure of a person's step's potential. Her lips pressed together again, silent, humbled. I smiled faintly and walked away. The crowd continued to admire, to whisper, to acknowledge my accomplishments. The satisfaction wasn't loud or boisterous. It was cinematic, quiet, perfect. Her words from years ago, "You'll never be someone," were drowned out by reality, by proof, by me. And finally, the world, our family, and Aunt Rena herself could see, I had become someone she never imagined. The morning was quiet, the city hummed softly beyond the windows of my latest property, but inside everything was still. I walked the halls alone, the sound of my footsteps echoing against polished floors. It had taken years to get here, years of doubt, failure, small victories, and meticulous planning, years of keeping my focus sharp while the world, including Aunt Rena, wrote me off. I paused at the entrance to one of the apartments, the sunlight streaming through the windows catching the dust motes like tiny diamonds. I ran my hand over the smooth countertop, remembering how it had looked when I first took over the building: cracked tiles, peeling paint, neglected spaces. Now every corner bore proof of effort, patience, and vision. I whispered to myself, almost like a meditation, "This is mine, all of it, every bit." No one had to acknowledge it, no applause needed. The silence was enough. I could feel the quiet power in that space, the subtle satisfaction that comes not from vengeance alone, but from proving to yourself that you can rise. I thought about Aunt Rena. Her calls had stopped. The tremor in her voice, the nervousness, the attempts to charm or manipulate, gone. Her presence in my life had diminished, not with drama or confrontation, but through the simple fact that I no longer needed her approval or recognition. I smiled softly. Not a triumphant grin, just a soft acknowledgement of the journey. I moved through the hallway, past rooms I had personally renovated, each one a small testament to my growth. The rage that had once fueled me, the anger at her words, at the dismissal, at the years of belittlement, had transformed. Now it was quiet, subtle, refined. It had become satisfaction, empowerment, control over my own destiny. I stopped at a window, looking out at the city skyline. The buildings stretched high, gleaming in the morning sun, and for a moment I felt the scale of everything I'd achieved. Abdul, I whispered, as if the wind could hear me. You did it. Not just against her, not just in revenge, but against my own doubts, the fear that whispered in my ear late at night. You'll never be someone, the same words she had used, echoing through years of struggle. I had risen above them, quietly, patiently, relentlessly. I wandered into the lobby of another property, the walls gleaming, tenants moving about their day. I could see the small improvements, the care in the details, the respect in the interactions. This was my mastery, not just of buildings, but of myself. I touched the edge of the railing, feeling the smooth wood beneath my fingertips, and let my mind drift. Every decision I'd made, every late night with Ali, every consultation with Mr. Khan, every careful maneuver in negotiations, it all led here. Not just revenge, not just vindication. Freedom, independence, self-respect. I sat in a quiet corner, letting the sunlight wash over me. My thoughts wandered back to the early days, my failures, the humiliation, the moments I'd cried alone, wondering if she had been right. Funny, I didn't remember the tears so much anymore, just the lessons, the strategies, the growth. I whispered again softly, to no one but myself. I am enough, I always was. The city outside continued to pulse, indifferent, cars, footsteps, distant voices. Life moved on, and I moved with it, calm, steady, grounded. No need for triumphal declarations. No need for recognition. The peace I felt now was richer than any victory over her could ever be. I rose, walking through the halls once more, passing windows, rooms, and doors I had personally overseen. The echo of my footsteps was a rhythm of affirmation, a heartbeat of self-sufficiency. This was closure. Silent, complete, personal. Aunt Rena's words, her scorn, her dismissals. They were shadows now. Shadows I had walked through and emerged stronger on the other side. I didn't need to confront them anymore. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone but myself. I reached the rooftop of my tallest property, the wind tugging lightly at my coat. I looked at the skyline, at the streets below, at the world I had quietly shaped through patience, vision, and resolve. I let a soft, contented smile form, not for revenge, not for pride, but for me. The past no longer had power over me, it couldn't define me. I had risen, not just above her but above my own doubts, fears, and limitations. And for the first time in years, I felt entirely, undeniably, free. I unlocked the door to my office, and let out a deep breath. Silence filled the room, but it wasn't empty. It was mine. Every desk, every shelf, every framed certificate was proof of how far I'd come, not just in wealth or buildings, but in life. Jez was already there, leaning against the window with her usual grin. Finally, she said, arms crossed, mock impatience in her voice. You've been working non-stop. Thought you've forgotten we exist. Forgotten? Never, I replied, a soft smile tugging at my lips. Just making sure the empire stepped solid before celebrating. Empire? She raised an eyebrow, teasing. Dawn said, let it go to your head, Mr. Mogul. I laughed. A short, genuine burst. Maybe a little head already. You've forgive me though. You've seen the journey. She nodded. I have. From crying in your room over that first failed pitch to this. Look at you. Her eyes glimmered. Look at everything you've built. I glanced around, letting the weight of it sink in. Every building, every tenant, every carefully negotiated deal, it was mine. And more than that, I was mine. Free from doubt, from scorn, from Aunt Rena's shadow. Mr. Khan stepped in behind us, carrying a bottle of champagne. I thought I stepped find you both here, celebrating quietly, before the grand toast, he said with a grin. The quiet victories are often the sweetest. Jennings grabbed the bottle eagerly. Then let's not wait any longer. We popped the cork, laughter filling the office, mingling with the faint hum of the city outside. I held my glass up, looking at them both. To the people who believed in me when no one else did. I said, voice steady, almost reverent. To belief, Jennings echoed, clinking her glass against mine. To vision, Mr. Khan added, his smile warm but sharp. We drank. The champagne was cold, crisp, but it tasted like more than that. It tasted like triumph, resilience, and the finality of long-fought battles. I thought of Aunt Rena for a brief second. Not in anger, not in spite, but in recognition. She had underestimated me, mocked me, tried to diminish my dreams. And now, she paid her rent in my buildings. She'd seen her words come back around, but that wasn't why I raised my glass. This celebration was for me, for growth, for turning humiliation into empowerment. Jez nudged me, teasing. You sat quiet, reflecting again. Aren't that you? Maybe, I admitted, sipping the champagne. I am just letting it sink in. The life I reclaimed, the freedom I have now, not just from her, but from fear, from doubt, from all of it. Mr. Khan nodded knowingly. That's the real victory. The empire is impressive, yes, but it's nothing compared to mastering yourself, learning to rise above cruelty and keep moving forward. That's priceless. I looked at him, a quiet gratitude in my eyes. I wouldn't be here without you, or Jez, or the belief that I could be more than what they said I was. And you proved it, Jas said softly. You didn't just survive the humiliation, you turned it into power, into life, into you. The words settled around me like a warm blanket. I had spent years chasing revenge, imagining the moment I would see her humbled, and I had achieved it. But the truth was, the moment I realized I was free, truly free, the victory became something greater. The city outside shimmered under the late afternoon sun. I walked to the window, taking it all in. The buildings, the streets, the people bustling below, they were part of a world I had shaped, quietly, patiently, relentlessly. I turned back to them, voice soft but certain. We learned from the past, celebrated the victories, and now the future is ours. No one can take it from us. Jez smiled. Cheers to that. To life reclaimed. To growth, Mr. Khan added. To freedom, I said, raising my glass one last time. We drank again. The sound of the clink was final, symbolic. I felt it in my chest. The weight of triumph, the quiet joy of self-determination, the rage, the humiliation, the doubt, all of it transformed into something I could carry proudly, peace. I leaned back in my chair, eyes closing briefly. The empire wasn't just buildings. It wasn't just wealth. It was me, my choices, my resilience, my ability to rise above cruelty and claim the life I deserved. For the first time in years, I smiled without hesitation, full, complete, unshakable. I had turned every insult, every scornful word, every shadow of doubt into light. And nothing, no